Thanks, Michael. We'll have the questions at the end. So think about the workforce, the MD workforce, and what it means to both infectious disease and medical mycology, and have questions for Michael, who's kind of framed the issues. And I'll have all three of them up here a little bit after they talk. The next speaker is somebody well known to me, Floyd Wormley. Floyd did his postdoc at our place and went on to do great things in Texas, and now is a dean. And so I know how Floyd is. He enjoys talking, and he enjoys trainees, and he enjoys thinking about issues and stuff like that. He's an immunologist. But we've captured him here to come to talk on what hooks the non-MD into research. So as Michael did this as the MD coming through the training programs and stuff like that, and I've asked Floyd, who is a PhD and going through that route and now has to deal with people coming into the science field, what does he see as the issues and the concerns and stuff like that? So Floyd, it's all yours.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk today, but one thing I would say is one thing that you don't do is show the non-MD how much money they make. That's one thing. And so, as John said, I'm going to talk about what hooks the non-MD into research. But the first thing I need to do is give you my disclaimer that the views that I'm expressing today is not necessarily the views of the organizers, my family, my employer, or anybody else on earth. And so that's what you're getting today. And so as I was looking into what I'm going to talk about today, I came across this website from the National Institute of General and Medical Sciences, where they gave some reasons why someone won't become a scientist. And as you can see up here, it talks about you get to answer important questions, make new discoveries, be creative, work with interesting colleagues, so on and so forth. And as I thought about this, it did remind me this was a lot of the things that got me excited about becoming a scientist, about becoming a researcher. And it goes back to my youth. I always knew that I wanted to be a scientist. I knew that I wanted to, didn't necessarily knew that I was going to be able to. But one of the reasons why is because I just love the ability to be able to take an idea from beginning to end. Having something that I thought could work, having the ability to be able to design the experiments to doing it, and then see if it works. Now, of course, we all know that probably 90% of what we come up with won't work. But it's kind of like when I'm arguing with my wife. I know that 90% of my arguments won't work, but it's that one time that you're right that makes up for all the 90%, right? And so being able to implement creative solutions to today's problems, these are all great reasons to why a non-MD will want to get involved in research, but also to contribute to science, to contribute to society and healthcare without dealing with people. Now, what do I mean by that? Some people just don't want to have the day-to-day of how dealing with people. Me, myself, I love dealing with people. I love people. What I did not see myself doing is to have to tell somebody, sorry, you lost your son or your daughter or your mother. I didn't want to deal with that. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. And so, but I wanted to contribute the best way that I knew how. So that's why I decided I wanted to go to, stick to the research side as a non-MD and to do that and to work on that sort of thing. And so my aspiration was to be yes, I know, I do look like a young Denzel Washington, that is true. And so one thing that I aspired to be a tenured professor, to be a scientist, and to be a teacher. These are the things that I aspired to be in life. And why was that? The things that I was passionate about, they were actually going to pay for me to do it, to do research. I love teaching. I love the service work that I do for the community. So this was something that I was looking forward to do. This was a hook for me to go and do what I wanted to do. Also, tenure brings stability and security. I thought that if I were to work hard enough to make tenure, I'd have a stable job, I'd be able to support my family, and I wouldn't have to work about, losing a job, which for many of us, that is an issue when you've had to deal with job loss and insecurities and things such as that. To me, a great thing was healthcare. I wanted to have free healthcare. It's not free, of course, but that was one of the things, the stability about it. But others may prefer other sort of things, such as being in an environment where you don't know what's going to come down the pike as far as what you're going to be doing research on. That's what you might see in industry. Some people like the environment of being a part of a nonprofit organization or working in federal government where you may have more impact on policy. And I say all this because oftentimes, at least in academia, when we are training people in our graduate programs, we are trying to produce mini-me's, people who are going to rise up the ranks to be an assistant, associate professor, and do the exact same things that we're doing. But in reality, that's not the case. As you see here, more than half of the people would not be in academia. They'll be in industry or be doing something completely different. So one thing that I try to emphasize in my graduate programs is to make sure that you're working on individualized development programs for your students so that you can train your student for the career that they want, not necessarily the career that you want. And yes, that might be that they decide to follow in your footsteps, but that may not always be the case, and I'll discuss why. And so another thing that really brought me to the medical mycology community was the community that I was going to be working with. Everyone who I, through graduate school, even to this day, who I work with through medical mycology, has just been a great community. I've heard about communities where people will just were mean, that if you didn't get your PhD under this person, that your grants would never be funded. Everyone in the medical mycology community would just have their arms open wide for me. And for example, in graduate school, I was able to attend this molecular mycology course as a graduate student and meet many, many friends and many of the instructors who will become my peers, who will become my mentors throughout life and will help me in numerous ways, even to this day. But also, as other folks would go through the medical mycology course, it was almost like we were all alumni. We would always get together and talk about, commemorate about the difficulties in this task that we're doing. And so fast forward, I did this course in '99, fast forward to 21, now I'm able to go back and actually be an instructor in this course. And so this is all about building a community where we all come together. We not only develop friends and mentors, but peers and mentors, but we become friends. We actually care about each other. And to have a community like that is very important for not only bringing people in, particularly people from underrepresented minority backgrounds, when they don't see a lot of people who look like them, but to bring them into a family of people who they care about and that they can also have a long career as friends. And so, again, I talk about retention and recruitment, and also think about the population of our people who are coming into graduate school. So there's this survey that was done by the people at the Council of Graduate Schools and sponsored also by GRE, where they were looking at the people who are entering freshmen to graduate school. And one thing that you see here, they talk about some things in which if you look at first-time U.S. citizens and permanent residents in the graduate school in the fall of 2019, almost a quarter of them were underrepresented minorities. So this was a change versus 10 years prior to. So we have more and more people entering graduate school for the first time who are underrepresented minorities. Although we still have some things that we have to get through. Although there were healthy increases in terms of first-time enrollment with URMs, we still have a long, long way to go. And you can kind of see that here. And I would just point to one point here where you see in health sciences, particularly looking at black first-time students, we started off at 8.1% and made a huge increase to 8.9%. Okay, so we made some increases, but we still got a ways to go in how we do that. Another population I want to look at is gender. And so just like we heard about before with ID, in fall 2019, more than half of our first-time graduate students at the master's degree level, or certificate level, or the doctoral level were women. And we see that reflected also when the people who are just becoming freshmen also on the undergraduate level. More than half of those attending on the undergraduate level are also women. But we still have a ways to go in certain fields. For example, you look at in the fields of biological and agricultural sciences, predominantly women. In education, predominantly women, but in engineering, mathematics, and computer sciences, so on and so forth, is flipped, still predominantly male. So we still have a ways to go in which to have gender equity in some of the fields. But also what's very important, how do we represent ourselves to the public and how we want to put ourselves out there. So one program that I used to watch all the time was Doctor Who. And if you look here, most of the doctors of Dr. Who are all white males. It was not until very recently where we had a white female. And from my understanding, in next year, we're going to have our first black male Doctor Who. The only doctor that I knew growing up was Dr. Dre, who is an actual doctor, by the way. Okay, but this is very important when we think about what we just went through with the pandemic. And that oftentimes you don't know when you need someone to put out there to send a message that can be trusted by the communities that you need to talk to. For example, we see a success story here with Dr. Corbett, who was working on leading a team to come up with a COVID vaccine. But what's important about her, and you may not be able to see this, but she was also an NIH undergraduate scholar. There were programs that at the undergraduate level will bring them into the laboratory and then will help and nurture them so they can have that, fulfill that desire to get a PhD degree. And there are many other programs that do that, McNair Scholar Program, MBRS RISE programs. There are many programs that are out there that will bring in students on the undergraduate level into the laboratory with mentors with the whole purpose to get them to go to graduate school, to become a researcher, to get a PhD, to be in this field. And so we need to do a lot more of those sort of things to bring people in, support them with stipends and whatnot, provide them with good mentors, and that also enhances their retention rate and graduation rates at the undergraduate level as well. And also, just to be equitable, sometimes you do need evil people with PhDs as well. So, but also there's some threats to hooking a non-MD into research. We talked about the pipeline of future non-MD scientists, but also the whole thing about tenure promotion that is very, very vital, in my opinion, to maintaining and sustaining a vibrant non-MD research community. As of right now, as we have a significant increase in institutions who want to be R1 institutions, very high research institutions. Many of them are bringing in people as assistant professors with the understanding that you coming in the door, you need to have some funding coming through the door. They want those K1s, they want those R21s or something like that coming through the door. Or they're saying you may not be coming through the door with money, but by the time you get tenure, you need to have money, or not only have money, you've had to renew that grant. That's a very, very high bar that we're setting for people. We want to make them, keep them in the field. And so oftentimes we're chasing pay lines to try to, as soon as you think you met the pay line drops a little bit. I remember when I first, as an assistant professor, it had dropped to like 6-7%. Good thing I was a praying man at the time. But also there's threats to tenure itself. I'm saying that there are a lot of border regions and a lot of boards of trustees that do not understand this whole idea of tenure. What do you mean you just can't fire somebody when you want to? They don't understand the whole idea of tenure. You see a lot of the percentage of tenure faculty dropping and non-tenure faculty raising in a lot of institutions. FOAs for medical mycology. It does break my heart when I look at an FOA and I see bacteriology, virology, parasitology, and period. It's like they forgot about everything else out there in some of these FOAs. The other thing is people doing back-to-back postdocs. How long am I going to be broke? They want to raise a family one day. The other thing that they're doing is these postdocs are looking at their mentors, always writing grants, always stressing about writing grants, always stressing about, am I going to get tenure? And they also say to themselves, is that the quality of life that I want? Do I want to be sun up to sundown in the laboratory? I remember when I was a brand new father as an assistant professor, the one job I had to do was to be home by 7 p.m. to give my kids their bath. And you would think making it home by 7 p.m. was easy. It was hard. I always had something I needed to write, a paper or something I needed to do. So a lot of people also think about the quality of life that they want to live and if this is what they want to do. And it's just not me saying that. There was a paper in Nature in 2021 that listed what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to your personal career progression. And two of the top 3 had to do with funding or lack of funding or competition for funding. They also talked about unwillingness and ability to sacrifice personal time and time with family. So quality of life is something that we really have to deal with. And one of the primary drivers of quality of life is, am I going to be able to earn a living for my family? Am I going to get that tenure? Am I going to be able to get that grant so that I can get tenure? The other thing I'm sad to say that was just something new to me that hit about 10, 15 years ago was this whole idea of politics. I grew up as a just working class kid in Biloxi, Mississippi. And then I was watching on the television one day, watching CNN, and all of a sudden I realized that I'm in the cultural elite. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? Just because I had a PhD, I was in the cultural, I was now an elite. My checkbook didn't say I was an elite, but I was an elite at that time. So, and also, I was watching, you know, that thing that on PBS where they're listening to senators and House of Representatives talking on C-SPAN. Yes, I watch C-SPAN. And people were talking about why would we want to fund research on flies? Who cares about Drosophila flies? And then at that same time, guess what dropped? Toll-like receptors. The research they were talking about, why are we funding this fly research, was toll-like receptor research. And that's why I tell our faculty, when you're teaching these kids in the classroom, biology, chemistry, you may not be teaching a future researcher, but you may be teaching a future senator, congressman, or whatnot, who's going to have a hand in how much money you get. And this whole idea about burning books and banning books and whatnot is putting a damper on why do people want to be teachers in the first place, let alone be researchers. But still, I think this is the best gig on earth. I would not trade it for anything. Back when I was thinking about going for an assistant professor job, I was really worried about, was I ever going to make tenure? And I said to myself, I'd rather try and fail and then to never try at all. And luckily, I was successful. But a lot of people are just not trying to go into the field because they just worry about funding, they worry about tenure, they worry about all these things. But I guess that what we should do is we just do our best to let them know why they're passionate about what they want to get into, keep our arms open to welcome them into our community, and just to nurture them and to walk them through this. And with that, thank you.